Thank you, Francisco, for a warm invitation, and thank you for taking the time to be here today, and to Candela for all the support in the last few weeks. And I hope in the next half an hour will be of some insight into the future of placemaking and retail. Benjamin Franklin very famously said there are two certainties in life: death and tax. And I'd like to add one more to that, and that's change. In urban regeneration, in real estate, in retail, we are experiencing tectonic change. Change at warp speed. And that's not to do with shifts in architecture or design or technology, I believe. That's to do with a very fundamental shift in the relationship between our audience and brands and places. The shift in how they respond and respond to brands and to each other. We call this retail Darwinism, where the change in behavior, the speed of change in behavior, businesses cannot adapt fast enough. So if you are sitting on thousands of square meters of concrete and glass, how can you develop your business to be agile enough to respond to these rapid changes, where our audience are shopping on platforms that didn't exist 6 months ago? So the future isn't what it used to be, as Paul Valery said. The future is fast, and the future is here now. And that's why, as businesses, we have to absolutely have an innovation DNA to respond to this rapidly changing landscape that we find ourselves in. So hello, my name is Ibrahim Ibrahim. I run a business called Portland Design. We're a placemaking, a retail strategy and design business. And we work across a whole range of different types of places, from the first pop-up shopping mall in Berlin, we designed, to department stores, to mixed-use developments in Istanbul, to airports. This is in JFK. We do a lot of airports and railway stations. This is a high-speed railway station in London. We're doing the only large-scale Zone 1 regeneration in London called Elephant and Castle. We develop co-working, as well as retail and food and beverage. So we work with tenants, with occupiers, and with asset owners and asset managers. But I'm not here to talk to you not so much about our work. I want to talk to you about our thinking and our approach to place and its role in urban regeneration and the impact that the changes in retail are having on placemaking. And our mantra as a business is people and places, not buildings and spaces. And for us, that's very important, because we believe absolutely passionately that any type of development, any type of placemaking must be driven by understanding our audience in order to deliver future-ready design. And I wrote a book recently called Future Ready Retail. Please check it out. This is a summary, if you like, of that book, this presentation. So we call this the human place, a play on the word, or on the term human race. And it's about people being at the center. And therefore, we have a 5-step process of placemaking. As I say, we start with people understanding their profiles, their journeys, their missions. We call that the audience truths. Then understanding the culture that drives their behavior, the culture that drives their communities of common interest, their motivations. We call that the cultural truths. And from that, we develop the vision, the story, the strategy, the place story. What is the proposition, the experience drivers? We call that the place truths. And only then, on the 4th step, do we take our pens out and we start planning, experience planning, and how that plan develops through the activations and the mix of occupiers and the connectivity between them. We call that the market truths. And only at the fifth step do we suggest that you begin to design buildings. Now, the problem has been, I believe, part of the problem is that often developments work the other way around. First, we start with shapes of buildings and shapes of plans. And not much attention is paid to understanding our audience, researching our audience, and very importantly, co-creating with our audience. And of course, in all this, 5 steps, the planet is absolutely at the core. It's in the bloodstream of everything we do, every decision we make, every conversation we have, to understand the impact, the wider impact on the planet and our lives. So we call this the connective tissue at that ground level. Place is made at the ground level. And how do you create the connective tissue that connects the occupiers, connects the districts, but very importantly, connects the development to community? That's why we call it this tissue at the ground level. To deliver an authentic spirit of place and a sense of belonging. Now, if we're going to talk about people and our audience, we've got to understand what drives them. Now, I don't have the time to go into details about this, of course, but we have 11 traits, 11 core behaviors, core expectations that I believe in any project, in any development, one needs to understand and respond to these key expectations. And it's generation agnostic. It doesn't matter which generation we're talking about. These are core human behaviors that have been developing. First, we value freedom and choice in everything we do. We love to customize and personalize increasingly. We've got the ability to scrutinize everything. There is no hiding places for businesses anymore. We like to share everything, both physically and, very importantly, digitally. So the viral sharing is very rapid. But very importantly, these two things are blending. In future, we're not going to have anything like an online and an offline business. The idea of offline and online, physical and virtual in future will be anathema. This is one thing. We call it inline. We flip from online to offline in milliseconds. There's no distinction. No business can be just an online business in future, particularly in retail. We demand integrity and openness. We're seeing an increasing activism from consumers, activism from employees. This activism, and we're seeing the political turmoil at the moment, that is going to increase. The days of businesses being apolitical are over. Businesses have got to have a point of view about politics, the wider sense of politics, not necessarily party politics, because consumers are increasingly making their choices not around product and service, but around values and purpose. We want entertainment and play in work, education, and leisure. We're seeing an informality. I mean, how many people here have got suits and ties? Informality in work. This playfulness is building. That playfulness, it has a big impact on how we develop place. And I think the big one for me is lifelong learning. The data shows that anyone born today has an 89% chance in the developed world of living to 100. So the idea of going to university and having a career will be over. We're going to have 3, 4 careers. We're going to change. AI is accelerating that. So this idea of lifelong learning, how we shift careers, is very important. But we're going to see not just education institutions delivering this, but brands will deliver it. And these lifelong learning activities will happen at that ground level, will be the new retail. So lifelong learning is a critical consumer development. As is wellness. The days of wellness being a category will be over. Every business, just like sustainability, every business must have a strategy for wellness. What's your wellness strategy? Physical, mental wellness? Is it product? Is it the environment? Is it about air quality? Is it about materials? Is it about health? That wellness strategy must be in the bloodstream of every business. We're seeing people being less committed to brands, less committed to jobs, less committed to their place of residence, less committed to partners, less committed to institutions, to political parties. This lack of commitment, we call it promiscuity. This promiscuity of consumers and people is a growing factor. So loyalty is going to be anathema. The idea of loyalty is very difficult. And that's a big challenge for brands and places, of course. We won't expect everything to happen fast. We won't even wait 10 seconds for a YouTube video to buffer. We want what we want, when we want, how we want it, and we want it now. We can order from our bed a burger to arrive, if you even eat burgers in bed, to arrive in 10 minutes. And that's just with food. That will be everything. The idea of dark kitchens is the beginning. Dark shops will be the next. Apparently, one of the most popular products for what we call quick commerce, quick delivery, are condoms, which I thought was quite funny. And we expect constant innovation, constant change. No business can stand still. That's what I mentioned right at the beginning. How do you, as a business, develop an innovation culture? Innovation is not a job description. It's not what you do. It's the way you are. There is no choice. As a business, you must constantly disrupt yourself before someone else disrupts you. This is critical. And I think the 11th trait is the most critical trait. This constant innovation is is our challenge to deliver. So we've got to shift from these boxes that are sealed, that you can buy stuff. We used to call them shopping centers. To connected to community, smart, data-driven, programmable, constant changing, constant programmability, platform for living, working, gathering, and of course, buying some stuff. And we passionately believe that the future of placemaking is not about architecture, it's not about real estate, it's about content. And if you think about placemaking in the context of content, it changes the mindset. We think less and less about real estate and more about activation. Of course, real estate is a byproduct, but if we start with activation, we can build amazingly vibrant places at that ground level. So it's about content. And of course, that content is driven by an understanding of culture of common interest. What are the cultural traits that drive the behavior? And what are the communities that derive from that culture? And how do we co-create these places with that community? So the 4 C's of placemaking: content, culture, community, and co-creation. That's the idea behind our take on placemaking, of which real estate and architecture is a byproduct. So we've got to shift from a shopping rhythm to a community rhythm. We've got to think about that ground level, not just for retail, leisure, entertainment, but culture, workplace, education, healthcare, maker places, community centers. This is no longer about just shopping, transactional shopping. This is about community. A day-to-day rhythm where people come there every single day, not just once or twice a week. It is integrated into community, part of the streetscape, no longer turning its back to community as a box, but open and permeable, part of what we call the urban grain. We call that swelch, this ground level where shopping, working, entertainment, learning, culture, hospitality and healthcare come together to create a true placemaking and true vibrant place. And we've got to think more about, not about mixed use, this idea, this old idea of disconnected, siloed mixed use, where offices, hotels, residential, healthcare, education, all siloed into different buildings, disconnected to retail. We've got to shift from this disconnected mixed use to this connected blended use. How do we develop blended use environments and places? Let me explain what I mean by that. So at the ground level, we have retail, food, leisure, entertainment. And if we take each use, let's take workplace. The idea of co-working being about offices is absolutely wrong. We believe the real estate industry has latched onto co-working as part of offices. We don't believe that. We believe co-working is a response to a dip-in, dip-out culture of work, where we weave work into our everyday life. So we believe co-working is one of the blending agents, the blending component of workplace that sits at the ground level, and catalyzes and blends with retail. It's part of retail. For us, co-working is retail. It's not workplace. It's part of retail. And it drives retail, it connects to food, and it drives nighttime economy. And we've been designing workplaces and putting them in shopping centers, co-working places. Healthcare. We're seeing an increasing consumerization of healthcare, moving from the clinical side to the consumer side, mental and physical healthcare and therapies. This is the new retail. And so on and so forth. Residential retail. That's a big part of retail. The new battleground for brands is smart home. It's in the home. We can do everything in future in our home, whether it's a gym, whether it's cinema, whether it's shopping, through smart home. So the new battleground for brands, as I say, is in the home. So what is the connection between residential and leisure and entertainment? We're working on a project at the moment which has a cinema, and we're going to stream the latest movies into the apartments. So what is the home? Why is it disconnected somewhere else? And so forth, and I'll talk a little bit about education as well. Lifelong learning, education is coming onto the ground floor, is appearing as part of retail. So this is really interesting. And as traditionally, we are retail consultants, but this has changed our world in the last 5 or 6 years. We're no longer just dealing with transactional retail. This is all retail for us, where the ground level experience can drive value above ground, where you look at the value it drives in the apartments, in the offices above ground, if you create a wonderful ground level. But what's interesting is that globally, and we work globally, we are seeing, on average, about a 20 or 30% vacancy rates in retail places, retail assets. What is interesting is that there is no way that this 20 or 30% will be replaced by more retail. We're seeing the death of department stores, big spaces. Retail is not replacing them, cannot replace them. So what is going to replace them, as I've been saying? This is the co-working brand that we developed. So it's co-working. Education. This is an art school which is part of a new development in London that we're working on, but the art school is completely connected. It's part of the retail. It's part of the whole place. It's completely permeable, and we're developing co-working, cinema, leisure, entertainment, all part of a innovation incubator for graduates to start new businesses, called the alumni strategy. But it's all part of the retail. It's very, very interesting. We're looking at colleges, universities taking upper levels of shopping centres. My screen has gone blank here. I'll carry on with this one, but I can't see anything on here, please. Thank you. Mental health therapies. We're seeing mental health appear as shops. So what is this? Is it healthcare? Is it retail? It's both of those things. So that kind of sets the scene of what my main kind of message is, I suppose. In the book, I talk about the 4 pillars of future readiness, the 4 things that every business, every brand must respond to in order to be future ready. They are slightly updated from the book, actually. So this is something a little bit new. If you excuse my back, I'm going to have to turn around and read the slides if I have to. The first pillar is fast. We increasingly want things that are easy, simple, seamless, automated. Oh my God, I've just seen my picture. What's that? And now, this idea of convenience, hyper-convenience, is very important. 63% of global consumers are willing to pay more for simpler experiences. This is really interesting. Consumers see that as higher value. Whether it's smart vending, whether it's beauty based on AI, whether it's robotic arms for click and collect, or whether it's on-the-go services, by appointment services, or on-the-go dip-in, dip-out services. This is a DIY store in Canada where it's a robot in the store that you show. In this case, the customer is showing the robot a screw, and then the robot will take the customer to where the screws are. Also give you information about that. So this idea of total convenience is really important. We call this just-in-time living. This just-in-time, when I want, how I want it now. The second pillar is slow, the polar opposite of that. We're looking at immersive experiences, events that are shoppable, brands and experiences that are based around interest communities, specific interests, constant newness and constant shareability. I think the future of retail is partly going to be about live streaming. We're going to see more and more brands take space to live stream the experience on the top left. This is an eyewear store called Gentle Monster. Is it an eyewear store? Is it an art exhibition? Is it an installation? Well, it's all of those things. Impromptu, immediate entertainment based on an app, which you find out about its location only 1 hour before. So it's very around surprise. Or indeed, the fastest growing sector in leisure, which is competitive socializing. You know, we're finding that when people get together, they know so much about each other from social media, they've got nothing to talk about. So we're finding the growth of not only food and drink, but something to compete, whether it's ping pong, whether it's golf, whether it's darts, whether it's chess. This is really growing. There's 900 destinations for this in the UK at the moment. It's the fastest growing leisure sector. One of the latest things, which is, I think, opening in March, this is the Netflix store in I can't remember where it is now, I think it's Dallas. It's in Dallas. And this is where you can go and see your favorite series. You can buy merchandise, but very importantly, have immersive experiences around all the characters in these series. And these are going to grow, apparently. This is in Sweden, in Stockholm. It's a gaming lounge. It's a gaming event, so for singular gaming and crowd gaming. It's a gallery. It's a coffee shop. It's a co-working place. It's a retail outlet. It's all these things. It's a community for gamers. This is where retail is going. This is what's driving placemaking. We call this the inventizing of retail, event-driven retail. 57% of consumers say they would rather spend money on a good experience than buying a material possession. For a shift from products to experiences. I mean, these two experiences, they're not selling beer or selling sneakers. This is about bringing communities together. How many spaces like this do you have in your developments? We call this hyperphysical, the hyperphysical environment. 42% of Gen Z and 35% of millennials report feeling stressed most of the time. The hashtag slow living has been used more than 6 million times on Instagram. As we live increasingly busy, complex, digitized, stressful lives, we seek to switch off. We seek a respite. So therefore, we need to really think about our places and how we can reduce the density, the intensity of commercialization to give people respite. And it might sound a bit weird, but if you reduce the commerciality, you increase the spend because people are less stressed, they stay longer, and they carry on spending. We work in a lot of airports, and we do a lot of work in airports, and you know airports are very commercially intense. As soon as we reduce the intensity a bit, we see the spend go up. And this has been proven. And when we're planning shopping centers, planning placemaking projects, we really think about how we develop this idea and this response to this slow living movement. This is a place in Amsterdam. It's called the Offline Club. It's co-working. It's a coffee shop. It's a place of meeting. But you have to leave your phone at the front door before you walk in. You cannot have your phone in here. It's becoming very popular, really interesting. And of course, as I say, we must have places for respite, places where we slow down with no commercial. Look at Highline in New York. Highline has got 0 commercial offers. It's the busiest place in New York. Participation is the new consumption for the slow pillar. I still don't have the screen up, guys. The third pillar is local, which has really been driven by COVID. This is about local brands. This is about supporting local independence, unique experiences, and of course, sustainability. Authenticity is at the core of the local pillar. 55% of consumers prefer to buy from local brands. But it's not just small brands. Nike are localizing their offer in the top left. Lush are partnering with local coffee shops to bring a localism. Vans are having podcasts live streamed with local influencers. Rafa is a absolutely local brand. It has 40 what they call clubhouses. They don't call them stores, and they're part of local communities. Rafa started as a social network amongst their community. And Plaza Fiesta was an old failing shopping center which was acquired and turned into a Hispanic center with Hispanic shops, food, dance classes, childcare, healthcare, a whole bunch of different experiences. And it's very, very successful. But it's not successful only because Hispanic people go there. Everyone goes there because it is truly authentic. And that's where we're going to get away from this cookie-cutter approach to shopping centers, to placemaking, where we're seeing the same brands, the same things, the same experiences. People are turning away from the cookie-cutter approach. The fourth pillar is what we call belong, the most important pillar, I think. This is about ethical consumption. It's about purpose brands, people making choices through values and purpose. It's about beyond the product, brands that think beyond their product. Brand communities, and of course, values, value-driven purchases. Whether it's Patagonia or Tom's, these are really driving this idea of purpose-driven brands. And this is the most important piece of data that I researched when I'm doing this talk. 40% of consumers have stopped using a brand due to the way it behaves, not due to its product or service, purely due to the way it behaves. And that applies not just to brands, but to places, to all businesses. Community centers, part of Belong. This is in Stockholm. Rotterdam, sorry. This is a blend of culture, of food, of entertainment, wellness. There's DJ booths, there's a radio station, galleries, workshops. It's a whole range of different things. This is what I call new retail. This is true placemaking, true community. Green for Good is a hydroponic and soil-based farming. They grow produce, which they provide to the restaurants in the place, but also have a community kitchen and have classes and learning around nature and around growing food. These are the public living rooms of our public realm, where wellness is in the DNA of place. Whether it's wellness like the Breathe Salt rooms, where you think about salt and how it affects allergies, asthma, skin care. This is on the go. You just walk in here, 20 minutes, and you carry on with your day. And Nike have developed its own specific offer, specific store around what they call movement, mindfulness, nutrition, rest, and connection. This is Nike. Thank you. It's up on the screen. Thank you very much. Well done. It's off. Okay, so last section. It's gone again. Don't worry, I'll use these screens. So that were the 4 pillars. Fast, slow, belong, and local. So at the end of the day, retail has always been and will always be only about 4 things: recruitment, transaction, fulfillment, and retention. Find the customer, sell them something, get the thing to them, encourage them to come back. What's interesting is that transaction and fulfillment is moving away from the physical space. And what we're left with is recruitment and retention. If a brand or organization takes a space for recruitment and retention, it is behaving like a media platform. The physical store has the potential to be the most powerful and effective form of media available to a brand. And therefore, we think about 3 types of retail environment, 3 types of occupier space that they use it for 3 different types of experience. The first is transactional fulfillment. This is where we can buy, take away, click and collect, normal, traditional retail. The second is community, where brands bring their communities together. The rent can be based on footfall, on dwell, on retention, and on subscription. The third and most important is recruitment. This brand, Converse, the sneaker brand, took this space for 4 days. During that 4 days, it had just over 5,000 visitors. Average dwell time of 40 minutes. Live stream views, it had 1.7 million live stream views of all the things that were happening in here. It had 40,000 Instagram followers during this 4 days. It took $50,000 during the 4 days, which is not much. But more importantly, this 4 days attracted 226 million media impressions. If a brand spends 8 cents on a Facebook click, how much is it willing to spend on 40 minutes of undivided attention? How did this brand pay for this space? I imagine it paid for it through its square meterage. Imagine the value that that space had. 226 million media impressions. We've got to think of retail as media and develop rent models and the data from those activations in order to develop our rent models. We call this data activation, capturing the data that demonstrates the value of the media impression, which is what we can do now with a tool that we have developed. We call this data responsive environments. Become a place curator, not just a leaser of boxes. Move from shops with products for sale to stages with storage to share. Because this is the era of the spontaneous, the surprising, the unplanned, and the serendipitous. Serendipity. In English, it means a happy coincidence. How do we create a happy coincidence? That's the most important thing you can do in a place. How do we design a happy coincidence? Well, that's the challenge, because we need to create serendipity machines in our places. And we need a people revolution to do that. We need new skills, set designers, storytellers, ethnographers, data scientists, program managers. These are the new skills beyond property people that we need to bring into the industry, because the metrics have changed. It's no longer just about sales per square meter. It's about ideas, engagement, senses. How many surprises per square meter did you have in your developments yesterday? Smiles, we can measure clicks, we can measure shares, we can measure dwell. These are the new metrics. Because the future of place, the future to sustainable placemaking is place that speak like a magazine, that change like a gallery, that still sell like a shop, that shares like an app, that builds loyalty like a club, that seeds like an incubator, that experiments like a laboratory, that connects like a local and entertains like a show. Incremental improvements don't work in a world where change is not incremental. Change, as I said, is at warp speed. Because it's no longer enough to do slightly better than before. Post-COVID success will be determined by rethinking and reimagining. Rethinking and reimagining. Allow me to leave you with one last thought. There are 3 types of people in this world and 3 types of business leader. Those that make it happen, those that let it happen, and those that wondered what happened. Don't wonder what happened. Let's get future ready. Thank you so much.